Welcome back to Girl Party Chapter 7, Drinking Games. Now that the party has made it to Hooligan's Port and accepted a job from the mysterious Mr. Weber to clear his estate of undead the following day, they have been gifted rooms and dinner. Please enjoy Chapter 7, Drinking Games. I had only gone to take a piss. I mean, how much could seriously happen in the time it took to go to the bathroom? It hadn't even been crowded or anything. They had indoor facilities, yeah, it was a trough. But it worked. There was a little sign over it that read, "Aim true, friend," which I appreciated. I had no idea things would boil over the moment I stepped away. After we got the job, with the promise of pending payment, Molly had sweet-talked the dwarf behind the bar into letting us run a tab. Big mistake. The ale tasted like damp rye bread that had been left in a sweaty boot. But Molly insisted we all try just one whiskey. It was Dwarven Whiskey. I'd learned soon enough what that meant. Shayla, meanwhile, had already made 2 new friends. The girl was an NPC magnet. She'd invited them to our table since they hadn't eaten and casually threw their meals onto her tab like some kind of elven prom queen. The new arrivals were a human male, a barbarian warrior in his early 20s, and his elven companion, Lila. Boomer, yes, Boomer, looked like he'd been airbrushed onto the cover of Savage Passion Monthly. Ripped abs, flowing hair, armor with just enough fur to make it look intentional. Then he spoke, and ruined it. He had a nasally high-pitched voice that made him sound like he should be hawking muffins, not cleaving goblins. He launched into a monologue about the dangers outside the city gates, complete with phrases like escalating regional instability and bandit activity trending upwards. It was like listening to a frightened census clerk. I assumed they were both part of some quest. Probably a starter escort mission. Lila was straight out of Central Casting, lithe, leather-clad, longbow slung across her back like a fashion accessory. The green hair was a nice touch, a splash of creativity in an otherwise paint-by-numbers ranger. She looked bored until Shayla started chatting her up, and then it was like someone flipped on the sunlight. Elves, man. Then they started talking in Elven. Full-on musical vowels and glittery fantasy consonants. I stopped staring when both of them looked my way and giggled. Okay, that was suspicious. I blinked, one eye maybe slower than the other, and decided I didn't want to know. I was already tipsy. I just smiled and raised my mug in their direction like an idiot. Everyone was having a good time. Molly and Claire were deep in a discussion about the fundamentals of magic. Claire gesturing wildly with her hands, while Molly seemed fully enchanted with the conversation, asking questions as if Claire was her professor. Shayla was chatting up her new elf friend like they'd been separated at birth, and that left me with Angel. Turns out, she liked drinking. Said she was pretty sure she'd had alcohol before but couldn't exactly remember being drunk. I was very sure she hadn't. She asked what I'd been writing during the trek. While we had been walking, I had pulled out an empty scroll sheet and quill from my satchel to take notes as we had made our way to town. I was tipsy and forgot for the moment that I had told her I was a knight. Writing poems, maybe songs, about what we've seen so far, I said, responding honestly before I could catch myself. I froze.
Really? I write lyrics all the time.
Crisis averted. She was actually a knight. This had to be something she was remembering from the real world. The way her face clouded with confusion and then slowly lit up, like she was hearing herself from a distance. Yeah, that was the system twisting her memory to fit this new reality. That meant Angela, not just Angel, wrote lyrics. How cute. I already knew she listened to a lot of rock, pop punk and music like that, but I hadn't realized she wrote anything. That meant there was more to her than the armor and the oaths and the perfectly sincere declarations of honor. There was still some of Angela in there. Instantly, I swore to myself that if we ever got home, I'd ask to read everything she had written.
Actually, I think I lost my scrolls, the stuff I wrote, when the ship went down.
As she spoke, she was nodding as if she was trying to convince herself. Yep, the game was smoothing out the gap. Classic memory patching. Still, if this was something she was into, that was another thread I could pull, another way to connect. I smiled. I cleared my throat, tipsy with my confidence up. I said, I can spare a few sheets, and a quill if you'd like.
Hell yes. Thanks, James. Sir James, sorry.
She had replied a bit too quickly and too loud, but was too drunk to care. I chuckled as I handed them over, telling her it was fine to call me James. She took them like I'd given her a box of diamonds and started scribbling instantly, giggling every few words like she was writing the next great bardic ballad. This was shaping up to be a great night. The tavern had really filled out. It had that perfectly worn-down charm, like the place had been built by angry dwarves using bad decisions and good wood. The walls were stone and sagging, held up by beer barrels and stubbornness. Smoky light from fat candles glowed off tarnished tin chandeliers. Around us the room buzzed with energy. A pair of halfling gamblers were slapping coins on a game board that might have been backgammon or a diagram for summoning debt. A few woodsmen were deep in debate over the fastest way to defer a dire beaver. In the corner, a suspiciously polished knight was serenading a waitress with sea shanties while she stared daggers into her tray. A crew of rough-looking mercs were laughing too loudly at a joke that definitely involved someone losing a limb. It was loud, it was alive, and it was perfect. I liked this atmosphere, not gonna lie. I'd only gotten through half of my Dwarven Whiskey before I had to pee. I didn't feel drunk, right up until I stood. Then everything tilted. Not enough to fall, just enough to make gravity feel like it was experimenting. This after just half a cup, I stumbled toward the bar like I was trying to outpace the room spinning. Everything felt half-dreamy, warm, buzzing, like I was moving through a lazy tornado. I had never actually been drunk before. I liked it. "Oi Blondie, over here!" came a gruff male voice from down the bar. It was one of the mercs. Tall guy, easily 6'4", with a long black beard and arms like tree trunks. He looked like someone had described a Viking to a gym rat and handed him an axe. "How'd you end up with all those women?" the large man asked, raising his mug and flashing a crooked grin. "Charisma," I shot back with a snort and theatrical shrug. I tried not to lose my balance as the dwarf behind the bar thumbed toward the back hallway. Then, because I was drunk and feeling generous, or maybe just drunk, I added, "They're not mine. We just travel together." He gave me a slow nod, lifted his cup in salute, and turned back to his crew. I shuffled off to relieve myself, one hand dragging along the wall for support. The bathroom itself was not clean, but I was too tipsy to care. There were suspicious puddles, 2 cracked tiles, and 1 unconscious gnome in the corner, possibly snoring, or cursing. Hard to tell. "Aim true, friend," I read the sign hanging in front of me out loud as I leaned forward, putting my hand on the wall and preparing to relieve myself. I sighed, closed my eyes and tried to relax. As I did, my mind began to drift. I started to think about Angela. Was tonight my big chance to get closer to her? Should I even be thinking that way? Was any of this even real? It all felt real. It was as if the whiskey let my mind relax enough to consider the possibilities, and maybe made me just morally flexible enough to care less about the ethics of all this. I sighed again as I started to go. Even though I felt like I had a barrel in my gut that needed to be emptied, it only actually took me a few short moments to finish. Still, I remained leaning there with my hand on the wall and my eyes closed. Everything felt better drunk. I couldn't remember ever having talked to Angela this much in the real world. Back home, a conversation like this would have required a party, a miracle, or me catching her in the hallway when her headphones were dead. Even tonight, at first it had seemed Shayla was insistent on being the third voice in my conversation with Angel. I'd been ridiculously happy when Shayla's new friends had peeled her attention away. And now I was thinking about Shayla. I didn't want to be. Things had been really busy right after she woke me on the beach. Honestly, after the goblin fight, I'd even forgotten about the whole thing for a bit. Now, drunk, it came back to mind. One part in particular, the kiss. I told myself that I should not feel ashamed. I had not known it was her, and even then, this was a different being, an elf, with completely different biology. Shayla, not Sharon. Kind of. Even just trying to console myself using that argument made me feel a little guilty. In my heart, it was Sharon. I was glad that she had gotten herself distracted with Boomer and Lila. Boomer was a handsome guy. Hopefully her burgeoning crush would shift to Boomer. And that would give me more freedom to chat up Angela. I immediately started thinking of clever things to say. Then I felt it. A small hand on the side of my thigh. I froze. My eyes popped open. I looked to my right. I looked down. A tiny man in a button-up jean shirt, trousers, and a leather vest had his little hand on my leg. It was a halfling, about waist-high with graying, shaggy brown hair and a smooth, expressive face. His eyes were closed. He was beginning to relieve himself. He was using my leg to brace himself. "A bit friendly for the bathroom," I slurred with a smile. The halfling yelped in surprise and spun to face me. His stream spun with him. "No! Hey!" I snapped, stumbling back. The stream had nailed my right leg, causing me to recoil and bump against the wall. "Sorry, friend," the little man said with a chuckle and a 2-finger wave from his forehead. He looked confused, but cheerful. "That's actually good luck, you know," he added, turning back to the trough to finish his business. It's really not, I sighed, looking for a sink. I was familiar enough with the rules to know that there was no bonus for getting peed on by a halfling. There was no sink, no hard feelings, I hope the little fellow called over cheerfully as I started to depart. I grumbled but gave him a wave, signaling it was okay. Outside nothing was okay. As I started walking back into the common room, I realized there was a commotion ahead. I got a little excited. It seemed like most of the patrons in the bar had circled around whatever was going on. Then my heart froze. Our little group was in the middle of it. There looked like 3 factions in a standoff. I saw Angel standing over, looking upset and aggressive, and being held back by Mom. Well, backed by Molly. Angel was glaring at the mercenary leader from the bar. He looked smug and was eyeing her and Molly. The way others had circled up, it seemed like there had been words. And the third group? Shayla. Shayla and her 2 new companions, Boomer and Lila. And Shayla was also glaring, but at Angel, what the hell was going on? Claire appeared in front of me, slipping out of the crowd like a red-headed ambush.
Come on, lover boy, you've got the gift of gab and we need your help now.
My drunk mind processed as far as Loverboy. Oh God, not Claire too! I was buzzed and thought she was trying to chat me up. Claire led me off by my hand to the corner of the common room, behind all the commotion. From the crowd I heard Angel yelling something about having mad flows. Someone else shouted, "Prove it!" and a lute string of remarks snapped somewhere in the distance. I was pretty sure by now that this was a dream. Claire pulled me close so we could talk. She pulled me a little too close. I was stumbly and I was drunk. She was urgent but giggly and tipsy herself.
Not that close, and don't look at me like that. This is serious.
How had I looked at her? Sorry, I'm drunk, I said with a dopey grin.
We're all drunk, dummy.
Claire sighed, collecting her thoughts a moment with her eyes closed.
Okay. Angel tried to cover our tracks. The big merc guy came over to hit on her and called us an adventuring party.
What do you mean, tried to hit on her? I asked, furrowing my brow. Claire sighed and just pressed on.
She didn't want to admit we were crusaders. I guess she forgot the whole fisherman thing too.
I was swaying and nodding along but drunkenly interjected. Actually, those particular salmon... Claire cut me off again.
She told them we were a freaking band, James. She told them we're traveling musicians.
Claire was wide-eyed and looked exasperated. Her arms were outstretched and urgent as though I should be in shock as well. So? I asked, waiting for the rough part. She deflated in exasperation.
So he didn't believe her. Then freaking Shayla said it's because she's immature and lies a lot, just making it worse.
Shayla said what? My eyes went wide.
Then Shayla started agreeing we are a band, and how Angel is so great, kind of backing Angel into a corner.
Wait, why would she? I began before Claire cut me off again.
Girl stuff, ask me later.
She said, leaning her head back, swaying and closing her eyes for a moment.
Just disarm this, James.
She said, clearly exhausted before looking back to me. I got you, I said with a wink, more confident than I should have been.
Really you do?
Claire's eyes were fully open again, but she appeared doubtful. I could hear her asking my plans, but I was already making my way through the crowd, Claire in my wake. This was it, my moment to come to Angel's rescue. I was a guy, playing a bard, pretending to be a knight. The path ahead seemed clear. One more layer of deception. You're all bards, where are your instruments? You all look more like rookie rat hunters than traveling minstrels, the mercenary leader boasted, his tipsy friends laughing with him.
Who wants to travel during their menstruals?
Angel asked with a contorted look on her face.
I could if I had to. I guess. I just don't see what that has to do with being a band.
I've got this, I said, coming forward, my voice thick with inebriation and confidence. Angel seemed relieved as I stepped up. Claire was still looking at me expectantly from the edge of the crowd. She had the worried face of someone watching a man attempt a backflip in sandals. I nodded at her with confidence and gave another wink of assurance. She smiled back a bit and started to nod. It's all true, I said with assurance, thumbs hooked in my belt loops and leaning back. We're a band. Claire's smile failed. Angel was beaming though. Win!
I've got the perfect song.
I heard Angel whisper behind me. Uh-oh. Thank you for listening to Girl Party Chapter 7, Drinking Games. You can listen to the band song that goes along with this chapter, also titled Drinking Games, on our Manic Animation YouTube page or our Patreon. Check back soon for Chapter 8. If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe.